There are stories that begin with light, and some that begin with darkness, but his began with silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, aching kind that fills the air when hope itself has stopped breathing. The kingdom of Aureliar once shimmered with laughter and golden song, yet now stood still under the shadow of sorrow. Its prince, once known for his radiant voice that could heal the hearts of men and charm the fiercest storms, had not spoken a single word in 3 long years. They called him the prince with a golden mouth, not for wealth, but because his words were said to carry light itself. Yet now his voice was gone, locked away by grief too deep to name. If you believe that kindness, hope, and second chances can bring life back even to the broken, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel, because this story's for hearts that still believe in miracles. Prince Alaric was born on a night of silver rain, when stars danced across the sky and an old prophecy whispered through the royal halls. His words shall build bridges where swords destroy, and his voice shall carry peace where none remains. True to the prophecy, his voice had a strange, gentle power. When he sang, the skies cleared after storms. When he spoke in kindness, men who had fought for decades laid down their weapons. When he told stories to the sick, they smiled through their pain. Even the birds seemed to hush to listen when he spoke. But life, cruel in its hidden lessons, would test that light in ways no prophecy could have foreseen. When Alaric turned 20, war came, sudden and ruthless. His kingdom, known for peace, was betrayed by allies seeking the very power that flowed through his voice. One fateful night, the royal palace burned. Alaric's father, the king, was slain. His mother fell ill soon after from grief. And amidst the ashes, his beloved fiancée, Lady Ilara, disappeared, leaving behind nothing but a pendant she had promised never to remove. When the flames died, silence took its place. Alaric stopped speaking. His once golden words, the gift that had saved so many, now lay buried beneath the ruins of his heart. The people called it a curse, but those who knew him saw the truth. He was not cursed by magic, but by memory. Days turned into months, months into years. The once melodic palace now echoed with quiet footsteps and whispers of what had been. Yet despite his silence, Alaric ruled with gentle wisdom, writing letters to his people instead of speaking, walking among them, listening more than commanding. The people adored him even more, for they saw in his eyes a kindness that words could no longer carry. But deep within him lived a longing, the haunting echo of Ilara's laughter, and the ache of not knowing whether she had lived or died. One night, unable to bear the weight of silence, Alaric left the palace in disguise. He rode through forests and ruins, guided only by the whisper of the wind that seemed to murmur her name. The world beyond his castle walls was raw and real. Peasants struggling to rebuild, children hungry, men hardened by loss. Each village he passed through showed him a reflection of his own pain, and slowly, a realization dawned within him. His people didn't need a perfect ruler with a magical voice. They needed a heart that understood theirs. As he wandered deeper into the forgotten parts of Aureliar, he came upon a small valley cloaked in fog. There, he heard something he hadn't heard in years, singing, not clear and royal like his had once been, but rough, trembling, and beautiful in its imperfection. Drawn by the sound, he followed it to a worn-down cottage by a stream. Through the cracked window, he saw a young woman with scars on her hands and sadness in her eyes, singing softly to a group of orphans gathered around her. Something inside him froze. Her hair was shorter, her face thinner, but there was no mistaking the soul behind those eyes. It was Ilara. But before his heart could leap, his courage faltered. He watched from the shadows as she soothed the children, telling them stories of bravery and hope. She was alive, Yet she had chosen to live in silence from the world that had forgotten her. And Alaric, the prince who had once spoken light into darkness, could not find a single word to say. He returned every night, never revealing himself, simply listening as she sang to the children and told stories. Through her voice, he began to heal. He learned that sometimes love doesn't need to be spoken aloud. It breathes quietly in presence, in patience, in the moments we choose to stay even when unseen. But fate is never content with stillness. One day, a messenger arrived in the valley, a cruel lord who sought to claim the land and drive out the poor. He mocked Ilara's kindness, calling her a beggar queen, and threatened to burn the cottage if they did not leave. The children clung to her in fear. That night, Alaric knew he could no longer stay silent. As dawn broke, he revealed himself before the villagers. His golden cloak was torn, his crown left behind, but when he spoke, for the first time in 3 years, the valley itself seemed to still. His voice, though softer now, carried the power of every sorrow he had ever endured. He spoke not as a prince, but as a man who had rediscovered his soul. He told them that kindness was not weakness, that love was not frailty, and that those who stand for others are never poor. His words spread through the valley like sunrise. The cruel lord fled, his men kneeling instead of fighting. And when Alaric finally turned to Ilara, tears streaming down both their faces, he whispered the words that had once bound their hearts. You kept your promise. You never stopped shining. She stepped forward, touching his hand, and replied softly, Nor did you, my prince, even in silence. The people rebuilt the valleys into a home for all who had none. The prince stayed there, ruling not from a golden throne, but from a wooden bench among his people. He and Ilara restored the kingdom not through war or power, but through compassion. His voice became a beacon again, not the commanding magic of old, but the gentle truth of a man who had walked through darkness and returned with light. Years passed, and stories of the prince with a golden mouth spread across lands far beyond Aurilyre. But those who met him found not a myth, but a man, humble, kind, and ever ready to listen. The legend said his voice could calm storms, but the truth was simple. He had learned to speak only when it mattered, and always with love. Every evening, he and Ilara would gather by the stream where they had first met again. The children, now grown, would sit around them, eager for his stories, not of kings or dragons, but of forgiveness, courage, and the quiet miracles that live in everyday hearts. Sometimes he would stop mid-story and simply smile, watching Ilara's laughter fill the air like music. And though the world remembered him as a prince, he remembered himself as the man who once lost everything, only to find the truest treasure, love that outlived silence. And so, his golden mouth was never truly about magic. It was about speaking light even after living in shadow. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that love can heal and kindness can rebuild what loss has broken, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel to help spread these stories of hope. Before we end, we have a special request. A comment below. Kindness never fades. To let the world know you believe that compassion still has power in today's world. In the final days of his life, Alaric sat once more by the stream, the same place where he had first found his voice again. The air was still, painted with the golden hue of sunset. Ilara rested her head on his shoulder, and together they watched the water flow, endless and calm. His voice, now faint but peaceful, whispered one last time, when words are born of love, they never die. And as the last rays of light faded behind the hills, the people of Aurilyre said they heard a gentle hum in the wind, the eternal echo of a prince whose golden mouth had once healed a broken world. The end.